Hello! Welcome back to my channel. Tonight we're breaking down the ending of Stranger Things 5, the finale that just dropped on New Year's Eve. I'll be covering everything that happened in that emotional 2-hour episode, how the characters' stories wrapped up, what that ambiguous ending really means, and all the details you might have missed if you were ugly crying through half of it like I was. There's definitely loads to unpack here. The episode is called The Right Side Up. And honestly, after nearly 10 years of watching this show, seeing how it all ended was proper emotional. So we'll start with a quick recap of where we left off, then dive into the final battle, Eleven's fate, that massive time jump, and of course, whether she's actually alive or not. There's plenty to get talking about, but if you like what I do here and want a way to support the channel, consider hitting the subscribe button down below. But for now, grab your blanket, get cozy, and let's dive into how Stranger Things ended after nearly a decade. So way before we get into the actual finale, it's worth doing a quick recap of how we got here, because honestly, Season 5 has been quite the journey. And I mean that in both good ways and stressful ways. For those who maybe took a break or need a refresher, Stranger Things Season 5 didn't drop all at once like previous seasons. Netflix split it into 3 volumes, which was pretty unprecedented for them. Volume 1, which had 4 episodes, came out on November 26th. Then Volume 2 with 3 more episodes dropped on Christmas Day. And finally, the series finale, Episode 8, premiered on New Year's Eve. The wait between volumes was rough, I'm not going to lie. Especially that Christmas to New Year's gap, where we all just sat there refreshing Twitter theories about who was going to die. The season is set in the fall of 1987. Hawkins is still dealing with the aftermath of the rifts opening at the end of Season 4, and the town's basically under military quarantine. The government has intensified its hunts for Eleven, forcing her back into hiding, which makes sense when you think about it. She's the most powerful psychic weapon on the planet, and the military absolutely wants to either control her or replicate her abilities. But the real threat this season is Vecna. He's vanished, his whereabouts unknown, but his plan is becoming clearer. He wants to merge the abyss with Earth and basically turn our world into a nightmare dimension. Fun stuff. Now, the abyss is probably the biggest reveal of the entire season. It's this dimension that exists beyond the upside down, which honestly blew my mind when Dustin figured it out. We'd always thought the upside down was the end of it, the deepest level of weird. Turns out there's something even worse underneath. The abyss is where Vecna's been pulling his power from, where the Mind Flayer actually originates, and it's where he's been keeping 12 kidnapped children to help fuel his plan to merge the dimensions. Those 12 kids are crucial to understanding the stakes. Vecna's been using them as anchors, connecting the abyss to our world. Their pain and fear are literally powering the bridge between dimensions. It's properly dark, even for this show. One of those kids is Holly Wheeler, Mike's little sister. She got taken earlier in the season, and watching her trapped in Vecna's mind has been one of the most disturbing parts of Season 5. Holly's storyline connects to Max in a really interesting way, though. Max has been in a coma for 2 years, ever since Vecna nearly killed her at the end of Season 4. But because she was in Vecna's mind for so long, she understands how his memories work. She becomes this sort of guide for the other kids, helping them navigate his twisted mindscape. Speaking of Max, she does wake up during Volume 2. That moment when her eyes open and Lucas is just there, crying and holding her hand, absolutely destroyed me. Sadie Sink and Caleb McLaughlin's performances in that scene are just incredible, but Max waking up doesn't solve everything. She's still connected to Vecna in ways the group doesn't fully understand, and she knows things about his plan that even Eleven doesn't. By the time we get to Episode 7, the plan is set. The gang has figured out that the abyss is going to get close enough to Earth that they can reach it from the top of the WSQK radio tower in the Upside Down. It's this massive structure that becomes like a beanstalk leading to another world. The plan is pretty straightforward on paper. Get into the Upside Down, split into 2 teams. One team climbs the tower, enters the abyss, and rescues the 12 kids from the pain tree, which is this horrifying organic structure where Vecna's been keeping them. The other team, Eleven and Carly working together, attacks Vecna in his mind to stop him from completing the merge. And then, once everyone's safe, Hopper and Murray trigger a bomb that will destroy the Upside Down forever and seal the gateway between dimensions. Simple, right? Except nothing is ever simple with this show. The military is also a huge problem. Dr. K, played by Linda Hamilton, is leading this Wolfpack unit that's hunting 11. They want to capture her, study her, probably recreate the Hawkins lab experiments all over again. The government learned nothing from what happened with Brenner, apparently. So not only does the gang have to deal with Vecna and interdimensional monsters, they've also got highly trained soldiers trying to stop them. Episode 7 ends with everyone heading into the Upside Down in Murray's truck. And there's this really tense shootout with the military as they're trying to get through the gate. Joyce is driving, Hopper's returning fire, and you can just feel how desperate everything has become. They make it through, but barely. The episode cuts right as they're splitting up, heading toward the lab and the radio tower. And that's where we left off. 2 teams, one impossibly dangerous plan, and absolutely everything on the line. By the time episode 7 ended, we were all basically sitting there like, how on earth are they going to wrap this up in one episode? Even a 2-hour episode felt like it might not be enough. The stakes had never been higher. Vecna's literally about to destroy the world. The military's closing in, and half the main cast is about to enter a dimension that makes the Upside Down look like a holiday. Well, let's talk about how they did it. The finale, titled The Right Side Up, wastes absolutely no time getting started. There's no slow build here, no long conversations about feelings or strategy. The episode opens and you're immediately in the middle of the action. Everyone's already in position, the plan is already in motion, and there's this overwhelming sense that everything is happening right now. According to Matt Duffer in an interview with Netflix, that was entirely intentional. He said something along the lines of, by the time we get to episode 8, we don't have to spend any time talking. We're able to jump right into it, and everybody was able to play their part in it. And honestly, I actually loved this choice. After 7 episodes of building tension and setting up the pieces, the finale just goes for it. The team splits into 2 groups almost immediately. Group 1 is 11, Carly, Hopper, and Murray. They're heading to the upside-down version of Hawkins' lab. This is where 11 needs to be, because she's going into the sensory deprivation tank, so she can enter Vecna's mind. It's the same setup we've seen before, the whole floating in the void thing, but this time, Carly's going with her. The 2 sisters are going to attack Henry Creel together in his mental space, which is called Camazotz. If they can stop him there, they can prevent him from completing the ritual that merges the abyss with Earth. Hopper and Murray have a different job. They're rigging the bomb that's going to destroy the Upside Down once everyone's safely back. The bomb itself is fascinating, actually. It's connected to a trigger that plays an album, and the music acts as the detonation signal. We'll get to which album they chose later, but it's absolutely perfect. Group 2 is everyone else. Joyce, Will, Mike, Dustin, Lucas, Steve, Jonathan, Robin, and Nancy. Their mission is to climb the WSQK radio tower, which has become this massive structure, reaching up into the sky of the Upside Down. At the top of the tower, there's a portal to the abyss. They're going to go through that portal, find the pain tree where Vecna's keeping the 12 kidnapped children, and get those kids out. The radio tower itself is mental when you see it. It's this huge, twisted version of the normal Hawkins radio tower, covered in vines and pulsing with red energy. Climbing it looks absolutely terrifying. One wrong move and you're falling hundreds of feet into the upside-down wasteland below. But that's the only way to reach the abyss, so up they go. What I really appreciate about this opening is how it respects the audience's intelligence. We don't need another scene of everyone discussing the plan. We saw that in episode 7. We know what needs to happen. The finale trusts us to remember, and just gets on with it. There's this forward momentum that doesn't let up for basically the entire first hour. The sensory deprivation tank setup happens pretty quickly. 11 gets into the tank, Carly's beside her holding her hand, and they both go under. Hopper's standing guard, Murray's setting up the bomb in another room, and you can just feel how vulnerable they are. 11's body is just lying there in the tank, completely defenseless. If anything goes wrong, if someone attacks the lab, she can't protect herself. And that tension is completely justified, as we'll see. Meanwhile, the rest of the gang is at the base of the radio tower. The tower itself is surrounded by this electrical storm, lightning crackling everywhere, and the ground is shaking. The abyss is getting closer. You can actually see it in the sky, this massive dark planet-like thing looming overhead, covered in what looks like organic matter and glowing red fissures. It's properly horrifying. The visual effects in this episode are just incredible. Steve volunteers to go up first because of course he does. That's just who Steve is at this point. He's become the group's protector, the one who always puts himself in danger first. Joe Keery's character arc across this entire series is honestly one of the best things about it. He went from this kind of douchey boyfriend in season 1 to someone who would literally die for these kids, without a second thought. They start climbing. The tower is swaying in the wind, pieces of it are crumbling, and demobats are circling overhead. Robin's making nervous jokes the entire way up, which is very on brand for her. Dustin's doing calculations in his head about structural integrity. Nancy's just focused and determined. And Joyce, who's climbing with them even though she's probably terrified, is doing it because her son is up there, and she's not letting him do this alone. The climb takes a while, not in a boring way, but in a way that lets you feel the danger of it. Every time someone slips or a piece of the tower breaks away, your heart stops. The Duffer Brothers really know how to build tension in these action sequences. At the top of the tower, there's this shimmering portal. It looks kind of like the gate in Hawkins, but the edges are more organic, almost like a wound in reality. Through it, you can see the abyss. It's this alien landscape, all wrong angles and impossible geometry, lit by this sickly red glow. The air coming through the portal is cold and smells like decay. Nobody wants to go through, but they don't have a choice. Back at the lab, Eleven and Carly have found Henry Creel in his mind. He's in the Creel house, which has become this shifting nightmare space in Camazotz. Rooms appear and disappear, hallways stretch into infinity, and there are multiple versions of Henry at different ages walking around. Young Henry, teenager Henry, adult Henry before he became Vecna, and Vecna himself, all existing in the same space. Eleven and Carly are trying to stop him from completing a ritual he's performing. He's standing in the center of a room, surrounded by these 12 points of light, each one representing one of the kidnapped children. As he connects them, the abyss draws closer to Earth. They can feel the pull of it, reality itself starting to bend. The psychic battle begins, and it's brutal. Vecna is more powerful here than he's ever been. This is his mind, his domain. He can control everything. Walls close in on them, the floor drops away, gravity reverses. Eleven's throwing everything she has at him, Kaylee's creating illusions to distract him, but he's holding them off. That's when the scene cuts back to the Abyss team. They've gone through the portal, and what they find on the other side is worse than anything they could have imagined. While Eleven and Carly are working together to attack Henry Creel in his mind, something goes horribly wrong back in the real world. Hopper's standing guard in the lab. Murray's in the next room over, setting up the final connections on the bomb. Everything's quiet. Too quiet, honestly. Hopper knows something's coming. You can see it in his face, the way he's gripping his rifle, checking the corners. He's been in enough fights to recognize when the calm is about to break, and then it does. The wolf pack arrives. It's Dr. K's military unit, the ones who've been hunting 11 all season. They come in fast and tactical, night vision goggles, suppressed weapons, the whole works. Hopper barely has time to shout a warning before the shooting starts. The firefight is intense. Hopper's a good shot, and he's fighting like a man who has everything to lose. He takes down several soldiers in the first exchange. Murray comes running in with some kind of improvised flamethrower situation, because of course he does. The man's a bit unhinged, but he's useful in a crisis. But they're outnumbered. The wolf pack has at least a dozen soldiers, all highly trained, all wearing body armor. Hopper and Murray are holding them off, but just barely. They can't leave Eleven and Kaylee. The girls are in the tank, completely vulnerable, lost in Vecna's mind. If Hopper abandons his position, the military gets them. Game over. Lieutenant Akers steps forward. He's the commander of this unit, and he's cold in a way that's genuinely unsettling. Alex Bro plays him with this quiet menace that's worse than if he were shouting. Akers doesn't care about the mission in some abstract sense. He cares about following orders, and his orders are to secure 11 by any means necessary. He tells Hopper to stand down, give them 11, and everyone else walks away. Hopper refuses, obviously. There's no universe where Jim Hopper hands over his daughter to the government after everything they've been through. He tells Akers exactly where to shove his orders, though I'm paraphrasing because this is meant to help you fall asleep, and I probably shouldn't be swearing too much. That's when Akers makes his move. Carly's body is right there, next to the tank. She's vulnerable, just like 11. Akers walks over, calm as anything, and points his weapon at her. He gives Hopper one more chance to cooperate. Hopper still refuses, and then Akers shoots her, just like that. No dramatic speech, no hesitation. One shot, center mass. Carly's body jerks, blood blooming across her chest, and she slumps against the side of the tank. The thing about this moment is how sudden it is. There's no time to process it. 1 second Carly's alive, the next she's dying, and Hopper's just standing there in complete shock. He didn't think Akers would actually do it. None of us thought he would actually do it. Carly's death pulls 11 partially out of Vecna's mind. She feels her sister dying, feels the connection between them severing, and she screams. Not out loud, but psychically. The scream is so powerful it shatters windows in the lab, sends soldiers flying backward, makes the upside down itself shudder. 11 rips herself out of the tank. Water goes everywhere. She's crying, stumbling over to Carly, trying to use her powers to heal her or stop the bleeding or do something, anything. But she can't. Carly's wound is too severe. She's got maybe seconds left. Carly looks up at 11, manages a small smile, says something we can't hear, and then she's gone. Linnea Berthelson's performance in this moment is absolutely heartbreaking. The way she looks at Millie Bobby Brown, the way you can see her trying to hold on just a few more seconds to say goodbye, it's devastating. 11's grief turns to rage instantly. She turns on the remaining Wolfpack soldiers, and it's not even a fight. It's an execution. She throws them into walls hard enough to break bones. She crushes their weapons into twisted metal. One soldier tries to run, and she drags him back telekinetically, slamming him into the ceiling over and over. And then there's Akers. 11 walks up to him slowly. He's trying to back away, raising his gun, but she stops him with a gesture. The gun falls from his hand. He's frozen in place, completely at her mercy. She doesn't say anything, just stares at him with these cold, tear-streaked eyes. And then she uses her powers to force him to turn the gun on himself. He shoots himself. I'm not going to lie, this scene is dark. Darker than anything Stranger Things has done before. We've seen 11 kill people, but never like this. Never with this kind of cold fury. It's a glimpse of what she could become if she lost everything. If the pain and anger took over completely. What's really interesting is that this moment becomes absolutely crucial later in the episode. Carly's death and the circumstances around it end up being central to the finale's most debated theory about whether 11 survives. But we'll get to that. For now, Carly's gone. One of only 2 main character deaths in the entire finale. And her sacrifice, because that's what it becomes, changes everything. The Abyss, for those who maybe skipped a few episodes or just need a reminder, is basically a dimension beyond the upside down, and it's properly terrifying. When the team goes through that portal at the top of the radio tower, they're not prepared for what they find. Nobody could be. The upside down is familiar at this point, right? It's creepy and dangerous, but it's Hawkins, twisted and corrupted. Sure, but recognizable. The Abyss is something else entirely. It's this vast alien landscape that doesn't follow any kind of logic our brains can process. The ground isn't quite solid, it's more like walking on something organic that shifts and pulses beneath your feet. The sky, if you can even call it that, is this swirling mass of red and black clouds, with lightning that moves in the wrong direction. arcing upward instead of down. And the air itself feels thick, like breathing through wet fabric. Gravity works differently here too. Sometimes you're walking normally, and then suddenly you're at a 45-degree angle, and the ground has reoriented itself. Dustin tries to explain it using physics terms at one point, something about non-Euclidean geometry and spatial distortion, but even he admits he doesn't fully understand it. This place breaks the rules. The structures in the abyss are these massive organic formations. Imagine if buildings and trees and bones all fused together and grew into impossible shapes. There are pillars made of what looks like muscle tissue stretching up into the sky, bridges formed from cartilage and veins connecting different platforms, and everywhere this constant wet sound, like breathing or a heartbeat, thrumming through everything. The Mind Flayer is here, not as some distant threat but present. They can feel it watching them, this massive intelligence that permeates the entire dimension. At one point, Steve looks up and sees what might be the Mind Flayer's actual form in the distance. It's this impossibly huge thing, spider-like but also not too big to fully comprehend. Just seeing it makes him feel sick and disoriented. Their destination is the Pain Tree. That's what they've been calling it, though nobody's entirely sure if it has an actual name. It's this enormous tree-like structure in the center of a clearing, if you can call anything in the abyss a clearing. The tree is made of twisted black wood that pulses with red light, and hanging from its branches are these cocoon-like pods. Inside each pod is one of the kidnapped children. You can see them through the translucent membrane, suspended in some kind of fluid, their faces twisted in silent screams. They're alive, but they're trapped in Vecna's curse, living out their worst nightmares on repeat. Their fear and pain are feeding the connection between the abyss and Earth, powering Vecna's ritual. It's one of the most disturbing images in the entire series, honestly. These kids, some of them can't be older than 10, just hanging there, suffering. Joyce is the first one to react. She runs forward and starts trying to tear open one of the pods with her bare hands. The others quickly follow, working to free the children. But it's not that simple. The pods are tough, and they're connected to the tree by these vine-like tendrils that seem to have a will of their own. Every time someone cuts through one, 2 more grow back. It's like fighting a living thing that's actively trying to keep its prisoners. That's where Holly Wheeler becomes crucial. She's been navigating Vecna's memories all season, learning how his mind works. She knows that these children aren't just physically trapped. They're trapped mentally too, lost in the curse. Someone needs to go into their minds and guide them out, the same way Max guided her. Max steps forward. She's still weak from her coma, but she's the only one who understands what these kids are experiencing. She's been there. She knows what it's like to be trapped in Vecna's mind, to have your worst memories twisted into weapons against you. The plan shifts. The physical team keeps working to free the bodies. Max, with Holly's help, goes into the mental space to free their minds. It's risky. If Vecna realizes what they're doing, he could trap Max again, or worse. But they don't have another choice. Max closes her eyes. When she opens them, she's in the red void, that familiar nightmare space from season 4. But this time, she's not alone. Holly's there with her, and so are the 12 children, each one living out their personal horror. Max starts talking to them, telling them it's not real, telling them that she knows it feels real, that the fear feels insurmountable. But there's a way out. She's proof of that. She's survived Vecna's curse. They can too. One by one, the children start to wake up. Not all at once, but gradually. A girl named Sarah is first, then a boy named Marcus. Each time one of them breaks free mentally, their pod in the physical world weakens, making it easier for the team to cut them down. The whole sequence is this beautiful parallel of mental and physical liberation, happening simultaneously. It's also, according to Matt Duffer in that same Netflix interview, meant to feel like a Dungeons & Dragons campaign, where every character has a special skill, and they all need to contribute. Joyce has her determination and motherly fierceness. Steve has his physical strength. Dustin has his technical knowledge. Will has his connection to the upside down. Mike has his ability to inspire people. Lucas has his unwavering loyalty. Robin has her quick thinking. Nancy has her strategic mind. Jonathan has his protective instincts. Everyone matters. Everyone has a role. By the time they've freed the 10th child, Vecna realizes what's happening. They can feel the abyss itself turning hostile. The ground starts heaving. Those massive organic structures begin to move, reaching toward them like grasping hands. The Mind Flayer roars, a sound so deep and loud it feels like it's coming from inside your own skull. They've got maybe minutes to get the last 2 kids and get out. And that's when Vecna himself appears. The battle between Eleven and Vecna has been building for literally years, and the finale doesn't hold back. Back in Camazotz, Eleven and Carly had been attacking Henry in his mind before Carly got shot. But even with her sister dying, Eleven pushes forward. She has to. If she stops now, everything Carly sacrificed for means nothing. The psychic assault continues, and it's vicious. Vecna's mind is his territory. He controls every aspect of it. The Creel house shifts and changes around 11, rooms appearing and disappearing, staircases leading nowhere, doors opening onto impossible vistas. He's trying to disorient her, trap her in a maze of his own making. But 11's been through this before. She knows his tricks. She forces her way deeper into his memories, looking for the moment when everything changed. The moment when Henry Creel became Vecna. And she finds it in 1959, which is actually when the Broadway show Stranger Things, The First Shadow, takes place. Fun fact, that show is on Broadway right now, and it's about young Henry Creel's origin story. The finale uses those same memory spaces, showing us glimpses of the boy Henry used to be, before the Mind Flayer corrupted him. 11's trying to reach that part of him, the human part that might still exist somewhere deep down. She's hoping that if she can remind him of who he was, she can weaken him enough to stop the ritual. It doesn't work. Vecna has fully embraced what he's become. There's no Henry left to appeal to. He's chosen this path, chosen the Mind Flayer's power over his own humanity. He tells 11 as much, his voice echoing through the twisted hallways. He says something about how humanity was always weak, always limiting him, and that becoming Vecna set him free. The psychic duel escalates. 11 and Vecna are throwing everything at each other. In the physical world, the lab is shaking. Lights are exploding. Hopper has to shield his eyes from the debris. In the mental world, Camazotz is tearing itself apart. Buildings collapse. The sky fractures. It's reality itself buckling under the strain of their battle. Vecna starts gaining the upper hand. He's stronger here than 11 expected. She's pushing as hard as she can, but he's pushing back harder. She starts to slip, to lose ground. She can feel him in her mind, trying to turn her own memories against her. Flashes of Brenner, of the lab, of all the pain she's endured. He's weaponizing her trauma. And then Will intervenes. Will Byers has had a connection to the Upside Down since Season 1. He spent time in it, was possessed by the Mind Flayer in Season 2, and has always been able to sense when it's near. But this season, something's changed. Will has developed powers of his own, psychic abilities similar to 11's but different. Less about raw force and more about connection. He's been in the abyss with the rescue team, but when he feels 11 struggling, he taps into the hive mind. That's the collective consciousness of the Mind Flayer and everything connected to it. It's risky. The last time Will connected to the hive mind, it nearly destroyed him. But he doesn't have a choice. Will reaches out psychically and finds Vecna in the mental space. He can see the battle happening between Vecna and 11, can see his sister losing. So he does something unexpected. He attacks Vecna from the inside. Because Will's connected to the hive mind, he's technically part of the same network as Vecna, and that means he can disrupt it. He starts pulling at the threads of Vecna's power, unraveling the connection between him and the Mind Flayer. It's like cutting the strings on a puppet. Vecna's powers falter, just for a second, but it's enough. 11 seizes the opportunity. She gathers every bit of strength she has left and hits Vecna with a telekinetic blast that's so powerful it tears a hole in Camazotz. The mental space shatters. They're all pulled back to the physical world. In the abyss, Vecna's actual body staggers. The mind flayer he's been standing inside of lurches. The rescue team sees their chance. They've freed all 12 children by this point. Max has guided the last of them out of the curse. But Vecna's not done. He's wounded, weakened, but still dangerous. He comes at them, his twisted form moving with unnatural speed. The battle becomes physical. Nancy fires at the mind flayer and lures it toward a canyon. Jonathan and Robin attack from above with a flamethrower and rocks. Lucas launches several balloon accelerants. Dustin and Steve attack from underneath, stabbing its egg sacs. The coordinated assault from multiple angles weakens the creature. Meanwhile, Vecna's fighting like a cornered animal, his twisted form moving with unnatural speed. He's screaming, this horrible inhuman sound. Joyce has an axe because, of course, Joyce has an axe. It's the most Joyce Byers thing imaginable. 11, back in the lab, but still psychically connected, makes one final push. She reaches out and finds Vecna in the abyss. She can't kill him from here, but she can hold him, lock him in place. Vecna freezes. He's suspended mid-attack, struggling against 11's grip but unable to move. Joyce doesn't hesitate. She runs forward and drives the axe into the back of Vecna's head with every ounce of strength she has. The blade goes deep, crunching through bone. She says something to him. The exact line is, "You fucked with the wrong family." And honestly, to this day, one of my favourite moments in the entire series is Winona Ryder delivering that line with absolute conviction. Vecna falls, his body hits the ground, twitching, and then Joyce finishes it. She brings the axe down again and again, until Vecna's head separates from his body entirely. He's dead. The mind flayer's physical form in the abyss starts to dissolve. Without Vecna controlling it, it loses cohesion, breaking apart into millions of particles that scatter in every direction. With Vecna defeated and the mind flayer destroyed, the party has won. But the cost is about to become very clear. With Vecna defeated, phase 2 of the plan kicks in. Hopper and Murray trigger the bomb that's going to destroy the Upside Down forever. The bomb itself is brilliant in its simplicity. Murray rigged it to a remote trigger that plays an album all the way through. When the album finishes, the bomb detonates. It's genius, really, because it gives everyone a precise timer. They know exactly how long they have to get out. The album they chose is Prince's Purple Rain from 1984. What's really interesting is how difficult it was for the Duffer Brothers to get the rights to use Prince's music. According to interviews, Prince's estate is notoriously protective of his catalogue and rarely approves licensing requests. The fact that they got not one, but 2 Prince songs for this episode, When Doves Cry and Purple Rain, is a massive coup. Ross Duffer said something like, "We were told that it was a real long shot, but they pushed for it anyway, because nothing else felt right." And honestly, they were absolutely correct. The music is perfect. When Murray hits the trigger, When Doves Cry starts playing. It's this upbeat, energetic track that perfectly captures the frantic energy of everyone escaping. The rescue team in the abyss hears it somehow, this music bleeding through dimensions, and they know it's time to go. They grab the 12 freed children and start running back toward the portal. The abyss is collapsing around them. Without Vecna maintaining it, the whole dimension is coming apart. Chunks of those organic structures are breaking off and falling. The ground is splitting open, revealing massive chasms of nothing underneath. The mind flayer's particles are swarming, confused and directionless, but still dangerous. Steve nearly falls at one point. He loses his footing on the shifting ground and starts to slip over the edge. Jonathan catches him, pulling him back at the last second. That moment, those two finally working together seamlessly after all their tension over Nancy, it's a nice bit of character resolution in the middle of chaos. They make it to the portal. One by one, everyone climbs back through into the Upside Down. The children go first, then Joyce, then the rest of the group. The climb back down the radio tower is even more dangerous than going up because now they're rushing, but they manage it. Nobody falls, nobody gets left behind. By the time they reach the ground, When Doves Cry has transitioned into Purple Rain. The tempo has slowed, the mood has shifted from frantic escape to something heavier, more melancholic. They pile into Murray's truck. Everyone's exhausted, bleeding, traumatized, but alive. The children are huddled together, still processing what happened to them. Max is with them, talking quietly, helping them stay calm. Hopper's driving now, pushing the truck as fast as it'll go toward the gate back to Hawkins. They're going to make it. Against all odds, the plan actually worked, and then they see the military waiting on the other side of the gate. Doctor. Kay is there with what's left of her forces. Armoured vehicles, soldiers with weapons raised. There's no way through without a fight, and there's no time for a fight. The bomb is going to go off in minutes. Hopper slams on the brakes. Everyone in the truck is looking at each other, trying to figure out what to do. They could turn around, try to find another way out, but there isn't one. This is the only gate. If they don't go through now, they die when the upside down explodes. That's when 11 makes her decision. She realizes something the rest of them haven't fully grasped yet. Even if they escape, even if they make it back to Hawkins, the government will never stop hunting her. Doctor. Kay's just the latest in a long line of people who want to exploit 11's powers. As long as 11 exists, there will always be another Brenner, another scientist, another military program trying to create more superpowered children. The cycle will never end, unless she ends it. 11 slips out of the truck. Nobody notices at first because everyone's focused on the military blockade. She moves quickly, quietly, putting distance between herself and the others. She's not going back through the gate. She's staying in the upside down, Mike realizes first. He looks around, sees she's not there, and starts screaming her name. But 11's already doing something that only she and Mike can do. She pulls him into the void. It's that black empty space where 11 goes when she's searching for people with her powers. Suddenly Mike's there with her, standing in the darkness, and 11's in front of him. She's crying. She tells him this is the only way, that the horrors will continue as long as she's around, that children like her, like Carly, like the 12 they just saved, will keep being hunted and experimented on unless she removes herself from the equation completely. Mike's begging her not to do this, but 11's made up her mind. This is her choice, and she's choosing to end the nightmare the only way she knows how. Purple Rain is still playing. The lyrics about never meaning to cause any sorrow, never meaning to cause any pain, and it's absolutely devastating in this context. 11 and Mike are both crying. They're holding each other in the void, and you can feel the weight of everything they've been through together since they were 12 years old. All the near-death experiences, all the separations and reunions, all the unspoken feelings and awkward confessions, it all comes down to this moment. They express their love for each other. They kiss, one last time, and then 11 throws Mike back through to the real world. He lands in the truck gasping, and before anyone can react, Hopper guns the engine. They crash through the military blockade, soldiers diving out of the way, and make it through the gate back to Hawkins. The bomb detonates. The upside down explodes in this massive blast of energy. The gate slams shut with such force it creates a shockwave that knocks everyone in Hawkins off their feet. When the dust settles, the gate is gone. Just smooth stone where the portal used to be, and 11 is gone with it. Everyone's standing there in complete silence, staring at where the gate used to be. Mike's on his knees. Hopper's got his hands on his head. Joyce is holding the children, who are crying for a girl they barely knew, but who saved their lives. The camera pans to show the gate in the library, the interior completely silent and empty. No upside down visible through it. No 11. Just nothing. I'm not going to lie, I proper cried during this sequence. Millie Bobby Brown and Finn Wolfhard's performances are just heartbreaking. And just like that, 11 is gone. Or is she? After that devastating moment, the screen goes to black, and we jump ahead a year and a half. It's now the summer of 1989, and it's graduation day for the class of '89. The time jump is jarring. Intentionally so, I think. One moment you're watching the worst thing that's ever happened to these characters, and the next you're seeing them in caps and gowns, preparing to walk across a stage. It's disorienting, which is exactly how grief and trauma work in real life. Time keeps moving, whether you're ready for it or not. We see Hawkins first. The town has rebuilt. There's a memorial in the town square listing the names of everyone who died during what they're calling the Great Earthquake. That's the official story the government put out to explain the rifts and the destruction. An earthquake, not interdimensional monsters or psychic children or military conspiracies, just a natural disaster. The town looks normal, almost too normal. Kids are playing in the park, people are shopping, life has gone on. But there are little signs if you know where to look. Windows that are newer than the buildings they're in. Patches of ground where the grass is a slightly different colour. Scars that will never fully fade. Mike Wheeler doesn't want to go to graduation. We see him in his bedroom, still in his pyjamas even though the ceremony starts in an hour. He's just sitting there, staring at nothing. His mum comes in and tries to talk to him, but he's not having it. He says something about how graduation doesn't matter, how none of it matters anymore. It's Hopper who finally gets through to him. Hopper's been living with Joyce, and they've both been trying to help Mike process what happened. Mike and Hopper share an emotional conversation where they both acknowledge Eleven's death and what her sacrifice meant. Mike doesn't want to accept it, but eventually he does. Eventually, Mike gets dressed. He puts on the cap and gown. He goes to graduation. The ceremony is at Hawkins High School. Everyone's there. Parents, siblings, teachers, the whole town. It's this big community event, which makes sense. After everything Hawkins has been through, a graduation feels like proof that life continues, that the future still exists. Dustin Henderson is the valedictorian. Guten Matarazzo absolutely nails this scene. Dustin gets up to the podium, and everyone's expecting some standard speech about achievement and perseverance and looking toward the future. And he does talk about those things, but not in the way anyone expects. He talks about how the people of Hawkins have been through something unprecedented, how they've faced challenges that seemed impossible and came out the other side. He talks about the friends he's made, the people he's lost, and how everyone in this town has become a family because of what they've endured together. And then he says something about how the divisions that used to matter, jocks versus nerds, popular kids versus outcasts, all of that faded away when people realised they needed each other to survive. He mentions Eddie Munson by name, which gets a huge reaction from the crowd. Eddie's been gone since season 4, but his legacy lives on. The Hellfire Club became this symbol of acceptance and rebellion that resonated with way more people than anyone expected. Dustin's speech builds to this moment where he's talking about community and acceptance and how Hawkins is stronger now because people learn to see each other as human beings instead of stereotypes. The crowd is loving it. People are nodding, some are crying, it's genuinely moving. And then Dustin does the most punk rock thing possible. He blasts Iron Maiden at the end of his valedictorian speech, a tribute to Eddie Munson, who loved the band and became a symbol of acceptance for the outcasts. The crowd goes absolutely mental. It's this act of rebellion, but it's joyful rebellion, celebrating the weird kids, the outcasts, the ones who never fit in. The teachers don't know what to do. Principal Higgins looks like he's about to have a stroke, but the parents are cheering. The whole community is cheering. Because Dustin's right. Hawkins has changed. The old hierarchies don't work anymore. Mike's watching all this from his seat in the crowd, and for the first time since 11 died, he almost smiles. Almost. After the ceremony, the graduating class gets invited to a party. The popular kids are throwing it, which would have been unthinkable a few years ago, but things are different now. Lucas and Max are going. Steve's even showing up apparently. He's become this beloved figure in Hawkins, teaching at the local middle school and coaching Little League Baseball. But Mike, Will, Dustin, Lucas, and Max have other plans. They're going to play Dungeons & Dragons one last time before everyone goes their separate ways for college. The series ends exactly how it began, with a Dungeons & Dragons campaign in Mike Wheeler's basement. It's the same basement we've seen since season 1. The same couch, the same terrible lighting, the same folding table covered in character sheets and dice and miniature figures. There's something deeply nostalgic about seeing this space again. We've watched these kids grow up in this basement, watched them go from 12-year-olds playing pretend to teenagers who've actually fought monsters and saved the world multiple times. Will, Dustin, Lucas, Max, and Mike are all gathered around the table. This is their final campaign together before everyone scatters for college and adult life. Dustin's going off to study somewhere with vast libraries, as he puts it. Will's moving to a big city, though he's being coy about which one. Lucas and Max are staying relatively close, both heading to schools in Indiana. Mike's going to be a writer, apparently, though he hasn't told anyone where he's been accepted yet. Mike's the dungeon master, which feels right. He's always been the storyteller of the group, the one who creates the narratives and guides everyone through them. His voice has gotten deeper over the years, but there's still that same enthusiasm when he describes the fantasy world they're exploring. The campaign he's running is clearly meant to parallel their real lives. It's not subtle about it. The party of adventurers has just defeated a great evil, a dark sorcerer who tried to merge his twisted realm with the mortal world. They've saved a group of innocent people who are being used as sacrifices, and now they're dealing with the aftermath of their victory. Each D&D character represents one of them. There's the paladin, noble and protective, who's clearly Lucas. The bard, quick-witted and loyal, who's obviously Dustin. The cleric, sensitive and connected to unseen forces, who's Will. The ranger, fierce and resilient, who's Max. And then there's the mage. Mike describes how the mage was the most powerful member of the party, how she'd sacrificed everything to defeat the dark sorcerer and save the realm. How in the final battle, she chose to seal herself away with the enemy's domain, ensuring it could never threaten anyone again. The other characters in the campaign are mourning her, wondering if there was another way, struggling with the choice she made and whether they should have stopped her. But then Mike, as the dungeon master, starts revealing what happened to each character after the battle. It's his way of telling everyone what he thinks their futures hold, based on who they are and what they've become. The paladin and the ranger fall deeper in love. They build a life together, supporting each other through the nightmares and the memories. Lucas and Max look at each other across the table when Mike says this, and they're both smiling. They've been through so much together. Max's coma, her recovery, all the trauma of the past few years, but they're stronger for it. Mike's narration makes that official. The bard travels to distant academies of learning. He becomes a keeper of knowledge, ensuring that the stories of what happened are never forgotten, but also never exploited. Dustin grins at this. It's perfect for him. He's going to study history and mythology, probably end up as a professor somewhere, telling students about folklore and legends, while secretly knowing he lived through something far stranger. The cleric moves to a great city where he finds others like him, people who understand what it's like to be different, who accept him for who he is. Will's eyes get a bit watery at this part. It's Mike's way of acknowledging Will's journey, his struggle with his identity, and his eventual acceptance of himself. There's an implication in the narration that the cleric finds love in this city, finds someone who sees him and understands him. Will quietly says, "Thank you," and Mike just nods. The campaign storyteller, the one who's been narrating all of this, continues his work. He writes down the party's adventures, turning them into tales that inspire others. He never stops telling stories, never stops remembering. Mike's talking about himself here, obviously. This is what he's going to do with his life. Write, keep the memories alive. Make sure that everything they went through, everything 11 sacrificed, it means something. And then Mike pauses. He looks around at his friends, and he says something about how the party has always wondered about the mage, whether she truly died when the dark realm collapsed, or whether something else happened. This is where the campaign becomes a theory. Mike describes how the mage had a sister, another powerful magic user who was fatally wounded in the final battle. But what if, in her last moments, that sister had used her powers one more time? What if she'd created an illusion so perfect that even the mage's closest friends believed it? The party in the campaign is skeptical. They saw what happened. They watched the mage disappear when the realm collapsed. How could it have been an illusion? But Mike points out the gaps, little inconsistencies that didn't make sense at the time. The way soldiers surrounding them somehow didn't see the mage leave. A flicker of light that could have been magical camouflage. The fact that the mage's sister, with her dying breath, might have wanted to give her sibling the one thing she never had: freedom. In Mike's theory, the illusion made everyone, including the military, believe the mage died. But the real mage escaped, invisible, free to finally live a life away from people who would exploit her powers. She found a place with 3 waterfalls, just like she'd always wanted. A place where she could be at peace. The other players at the table are quiet. Will asks if Mike really believes that's what happened. Mike says he chooses to believe it, that he can't know for sure, but believing it means there's hope, and hope is better than despair. One by one the others agree. Dustin says he believes it too. Lucas and Max nod. Will smiles and says it's a good story. They choose hope. All of them. Together. According to Mike, and this is presented entirely through his D&D narration, 11 didn't actually die in the Upside Down. But let's break down exactly what he's suggesting and why it's become the most debated part of the entire finale. Mike's theory hinges on Carly. Remember, she was shot by Lieutenant Akers and died in Hopper's arms. Or did she? Mike noticed something when he watched the footage, or rather, when he replayed the memory in his mind. There was a flicker, a brief moment where Carly's image seemed to shimmer, like a projection rather than a physical body. He thinks Carly survived the gunshot just long enough to use her powers one final time. Carly's ability, if you remember from Season 2, is creating illusions. She can make people see things that aren't there, make herself and others invisible, craft entire scenarios in people's minds. Mike believes that, as she was dying, Carly created the most important illusion of her life. She made everyone believe 11 died with the Upside Down. The theory goes like this. When the military was surrounding them at the gate, when everyone was panicking about how to get past Dr. K's forces, 11 slipped out of the truck. That part's real. But instead of staying in the Upside Down to die, she used Carly's illusion as cover. Carly, back at the lab, bleeding out but still conscious, created a projection of 11, a perfect copy that everyone, including Mike and the others, believed was real. That projection is what they saw staying behind. That's what appeared to be destroyed when the Upside Down collapsed. The real 11, meanwhile, was already through the gate, invisible thanks to Carly's powers, slipping past the military while they were distracted by the truck crashing through their blockade. It's actually quite clever when you think about it. The military was looking for 11. If they'd seen her die, saw the Upside Down explode with her in it, they'd stop looking. The threat is neutralized, case closed, 11's free to disappear. During the D&D campaign, Mike weaves his theory into the narrative. He describes how the party has always wondered about the mage's fate, and suggests through the campaign story that perhaps things weren't as they seemed. He points to inconsistencies, the way events unfolded, certain, impossible elements that didn't quite make sense. The theory is presented through the lens of the campaign rather than as an explicit breakdown, allowing Mike to express his hope while maintaining the storytelling framework of their final game together. Now here's where it gets interesting. The show doesn't confirm or deny Mike's theory. Instead, it shows us something that could be interpreted either way. We see 11. She's hiking up a mountain path, wearing simple clothes, a backpack on her shoulders. The location looks like Iceland, all volcanic rock and moss and dramatic landscapes. She's walking alone, and she looks peaceful. Not happy exactly, but at peace, like someone who's finally free after being hunted her entire life. She reaches the top of a ridge and looks out over this stunning view. 3 massive waterfalls cascading down into a valley below. It's the exact location Mike described to her once, back in Season 4. They'd been talking about running away together, finding a place where no one could find them. Mike said he'd read about this spot with 3 waterfalls, where people live in small communities, self-sufficient and isolated. 11 had smiled and said it sounded perfect. And here she is, at that exact place, so the question becomes, is this real? Is 11 actually alive, living in Iceland near those 3 waterfalls? Or is this Mike's imagination, his vision of where she might be if his theory is correct? The show deliberately doesn't tell us. According to Matt Duffer in an interview with Netflix's Tudum, that ambiguity was entirely intentional. He said something about how they wanted to confront the reality of Eleven's situation and ask whether she could ever live a normal life. He mentioned that there were two roads Eleven could take, a darker, more pessimistic one, where she really did sacrifice herself, or an optimistic, hopeful one, where she found freedom. Then he added, and I'm paraphrasing here, that Mike is the optimist of the group and has chosen to believe in the hopeful story, the implication being that the audience gets to choose too. Ross Duffer backed this up in the same interview, saying they didn't want to be definitive because different viewers would connect with different interpretations. Some people need the tragedy of Eleven's sacrifice to feel like the story has weight. Others need the hope of her survival to feel like the journey was worth it. I think the show wants us to believe she's alive, honestly. There are too many little details that support Mike's theory. The flicker in Kaylee's image, the specific mention of the three waterfalls, the fact that we actually see Eleven rather than just hearing about her as a memory. If she were truly dead, why show her at all? But I also understand the argument that it's Mike's grief talking, that he's constructed this elaborate theory because accepting that Eleven is gone is too painful, that the vision of her in Iceland is his imagination, his hope, not reality. The beauty of it is that both interpretations work. The story functions whether Eleven's alive or dead. Her sacrifice meant something either way. She freed the other superpowered children from being hunted. She closed the upside down forever. She gave her friends and family a chance at normal lives. Whether she's living peacefully in Iceland or resting in peace in the void doesn't change what she accomplished. Fun fact, Millie Bobby Brown has been asked about this in basically every interview since the finale aired, and she's been incredibly coy about it. She keeps saying things like, "I choose to believe Eleven found happiness," which doesn't actually answer whether the character is alive or dead. Finn Wolfhard's been similarly vague, saying Mike believes it, and that's what matters. The Duffer brothers have said they're never going to give a definitive answer. This is one of those rare cases where the ambiguity is the point, where not knowing for certain is actually more powerful than confirmation either way. Personally, I want to believe Mike's right. I want to believe that after everything Eleven went through, all the pain and exploitation and trauma, she got to escape, that she's out there somewhere, anonymous and free, living a quiet life by those three waterfalls. That Carly's final act of love gave her sister the gift of a future. But whether it's true or not, I think, doesn't really matter. What matters is that Mike and the others choose hope. They choose to believe in the possibility of a happy ending, even when they can't prove it. And maybe that's the point. But Eleven isn't the only character whose future we need to talk about. One of the things the finale does really well is give almost everyone a clear sense of where they're headed. So let's go through them. Hopper and Joyce finally have their date at Enzo's. Remember, they've been trying to have this date since season 3. It kept getting interrupted by Russian conspiracies and interdimensional monsters, and Hopper being presumed dead for a year. But 18 months after the Upside Down closes, they make it happen. The scene is lovely, properly romantic in a way that feels earned after everything they've been through. They're at this candlelit table, dressed up, actually relaxing for the first time in what must be years. Joyce looks happy, not just relieved or surviving, but genuinely happy. Hopper's cleaned up, shaved, wearing an actual suit instead of his usual rumpled sheriff's uniform. They talk about the kids, about how Mike's doing, how Will's adjusting, how the 12 rescued children are being cared for by families around the country who've been vetted extensively to make sure they're safe. Joyce mentions that she's been in touch with some of the parents, making sure the kids have support and therapy and everything they need. And then Hopper shifts the conversation. He brings up the idea of leaving Hawkins, getting a fresh start somewhere else, somewhere without the memories and the trauma embedded in every street corner. He's been offered a job as chief of police in Montauk, New York. Montauk, for those who don't know, that's a fun fact right there. Stranger Things was originally pitched as a show called Montauk, based on conspiracy theories about secret government experiments allegedly conducted there in the 1980s. The Duffer Brothers eventually changed the setting to Indiana and renamed it Stranger Things, but Montauk was always part of the show's DNA. Having Hopper and Joyce move there is this beautiful little homage to where the story began, conceptually speaking. Joyce is surprised by the suggestion, but not opposed to it. She's been thinking similar thoughts. Hawkins will always be home, but maybe home doesn't have to be the place where the worst things happened. Maybe home can be somewhere new. Hopper reaches into his pocket, pulls out a ring. It's not fancy, just a simple band, but the look on Joyce's face when she sees it is everything. He proposes. No elaborate speech, no getting down on one knee in the middle of the restaurant. Just a quiet, "Will you marry me, Joyce?" in that gravelly Hopper voice. She says yes, obviously. They've been through literal hell together, saved each other's lives multiple times, raised each other's children. This is just making official what's been true for years. The ring itself is interesting. Some fans have pointed out that it looks remarkably similar to the ring Jonathan was going to give Nancy back in season 4, before everything went sideways. I'm not sure if that's intentional or just the props department reusing assets, but it's a nice little visual connection if it is deliberate. So Hopper and Joyce are getting married and moving to Montauk. Fresh start, new chapter, they've earned it. Steve Harrington's story is quieter but equally satisfying. He stayed in Hawkins, he's teaching sex education at the middle school and coaching Little League Baseball, which is absolutely perfect for him when you think about it. Steve's entire character arc has been about learning to care for people, to protect them, to be the responsible adult in the room. He went from this self-absorbed popular kid to someone who would die for a bunch of nerdy teenagers he barely knew. Now he's channeling that into actually helping kids, teaching them, coaching them, being the kind of positive male role model that he probably didn't have growing up. Joe Keery said in interviews that he loves where Steve ended up, that it feels true to who the character became. What's also interesting is that Steve's no longer pining after Nancy. That thread that's been running through the entire series, Steve never quite getting over his first love. It's finally resolved. He's moved on. He's happy in Hawkins, building a life that has nothing to do with trying to recapture the past. Nancy Wheeler dropped out of Emerson College. She was studying journalism there, but apparently decided she didn't need a degree to pursue what she wanted to do. She's taken a trainee position at the Herald in Boston, learning on the job, getting real experience instead of theoretical knowledge. It's very Nancy. She's always been someone who goes after what she wants directly, who doesn't wait for permission or validation. The idea of spending 4 years in classrooms when she could be out there actually doing journalism probably felt like a waste of time. During the epilogue, we see her back in Hawkins for the graduation. She and Jonathan talk, and there's this bittersweetness to it. Their relationship is confirmed to be over. They broke up at some point during the 18 months, which makes sense. Nancy's in Boston pursuing journalism. Jonathan's in New York studying filmmaking. Long distance is hard enough without the added trauma of everything they've been through, but the way they interact suggests it's not a bitter breakup. They still care about each other. There's just an acknowledgement that they're going in different directions, and that's okay. Sometimes relationships end, not because something went wrong, but because people grow apart. There's a moment where Jonathan looks at Nancy with this fond sadness, and Nancy gives him this small smile, and you can tell they'll always matter to each other, even if they're not together anymore. Honestly, I think it's a more mature ending than forcing them to stay together just because they've been through a lot. Jonathan's at NYU, which is perfect for him. He's always been interested in photography and visual storytelling. Filmmaking is the natural extension of that. During one scene, he mentions a project he's working on, a documentary about small towns affected by disasters. You get the sense he's processing what happened to Hawkins through his art, which feels very true to his character. Robin Buckley's back from Smith College for the graduation. She's thriving there, apparently. Smith is a historically women's college in Massachusetts, and it's known for being very progressive and LGBTQ friendly. Robin mentions loving it, feeling like she's finally found her people. Vicky isn't mentioned or present, suggesting they've likely gone their separate ways, but she's also aware that graduating means everyone's going to scatter, so she proposes a solution. Once a month, everyone meets up in Philadelphia at her weird uncle's house. It becomes this standing appointment, a way to make sure the friendships don't fade just because people are living in different cities. Steve, Nancy, and Jonathan all agree immediately. They're going to need each other, probably for the rest of their lives. You don't go through what they went through and then just drift apart. The monthly meetups are a promise to stay connected, no matter what. Will Byers is moving to a big city. The show doesn't specify which one, but the implication is pretty clear. He's going somewhere with a large, vibrant LGBTQ community, somewhere he can be himself without fear or judgment. Will came out to his friends in episode 7, The Bridge, in a lengthy, heartfelt monologue. There's this beautiful moment during the D&D game where Mike's narration mentions the cleric finding love in the city, finding people who understand him. Will's eyes get watery and he mouths "thank you" to Mike. It's the show's way of confirming that Will's going to be okay, that he's going to find happiness and acceptance and maybe even romance with someone who sees him for who he really is. Noah Schnapp's been very open about Will's sexuality and how important it was to him that the character got a hopeful ending. In interviews, he's talked about how Will represents queer kids who feel isolated or different, and how showing him moving toward a future where he's accepted and loved matters. Mike's future is as a writer. The storyteller becomes someone who tells stories professionally. It tracks perfectly with his character. He's always been the dungeon master, the one creating narratives and guiding people through them. Now he's going to do that as a career. There's no mention of where he's going to college or what he's going to study, but honestly, it doesn't matter. Mike's going to write. He's going to take everything they experienced and turn it into something meaningful, even if he has to disguise it as fiction. Dustin's off to study at some prestigious university with massive libraries. He's going to become a scholar, basically. Someone who collects and preserves knowledge. The valedictorian speech was just the beginning. Dustin's going to spend his life learning and teaching and making sure important stories don't get forgotten. Lucas and Max are the real success story of the epilogue, relationship-wise. They've been through absolute hell. Max was in a coma for 2 years. Lucas sat by her bedside that entire time, reading to her, talking to her, refusing to give up hope. When she woke up, they had to navigate her recovery, her trauma, her lingering connection to Vecna. But they made it through. 18 months later, they're stronger than ever. During the D&D game, when Mike says the Paladin and Ranger grow deeper in love, Lucas and Max are holding hands under the table. They're going to schools near each other in Indiana, planning their future together. It's actually quite beautiful when you think about it. After all the on-again, off-again drama of earlier seasons, they've found their footing. And then there's Holly Wheeler. The final scene of the D&D campaign shows Mike and his friends putting their binders away, ready to leave childhood behind. But as Mike's heading upstairs, he glances back and sees Holly and her friends, including Derek, sitting down at the same table. They're starting their own campaign, the next generation picking up where this one left off. History repeating, but hopefully without the interdimensional monsters this time. It's the show's way of saying the story continues, not for the people we've been following, but for someone new. The cycle of friendship and adventure and growing up keeps going. Now we need to talk about the music, because the finale has some of the best needle drops in the entire series. If there's one thing Stranger Things has always done well, it's using music to elevate emotional moments. The show's made careers out of it. Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill became a global hit again after season 4. The entire 80s soundtrack has been part of what makes the show feel so authentic and nostalgic, but the finale takes it to another level entirely. The 2 Prince songs alone are massive. When Dove's Cry plays during the escape sequence, when everyone's running from the collapsing abyss, it's this high-energy, driving track that perfectly captures the frantic desperation of that moment. Everyone's sprinting, grabbing the kids, dodging falling debris, and Prince's voice is cutting through all of it with this raw urgency. Then it transitions into Purple Rain for 11's Sacrifice, and honestly, the shift is devastating. Purple Rain is already one of the most emotional songs ever recorded, and using it for that goodbye between Eleven and Mike in the void is just brutal. The lyrics about never meaning to cause sorrow or pain, playing over a scene where Eleven is literally choosing to cause herself the ultimate pain to save everyone else. It's almost too on the nose, but it works. It absolutely works. What makes this even more impressive is how difficult it was to get those songs. Prince's estate is famously protective of his catalogue. They rarely license his music, and when they do, it's under very specific conditions. Purple Rain especially is treated as sacred. The estate has turned down massive offers from huge productions because they didn't feel the usage was appropriate. According to Ross Duffer in an interview with Netflix, they were told getting Prince was a real long shot. The estate had to approve not just the songs themselves, but exactly how they'd be used in the episode. The Duffer brothers actually sent over detailed descriptions of the scenes, explaining the emotional context and why these specific songs were essential to the story. Apparently, what sold the estate was the thematic connection. Purple Rain. The album starts with celebratory, upbeat songs like When Doves Cry and ends with the emotional weight of Purple Rain the song. The finale mirrors that exact structure. Escape and survival first, then grief and sacrifice. The album itself becomes a narrative device, not just background music. Fun fact, the Purple Rain album is also what triggers the bomb. Murray sets up the detonation to happen when the record finishes playing. So the music isn't just emotionally resonant, it's literally part of the plot. I thought that was quite clever. Beyond Prince, the finale uses Fleetwood Mac's Landslide during the graduation sequence. It's this gentle, reflective song about time passing and things changing, and it plays while we see Mike putting on his cap and gown, Dustin preparing his speech, everyone getting ready for this milestone. Stevie Nicks' voice, singing about being afraid of changing because she's built her life around someone. It hits different when you apply it to these kids who've built their identities around fighting monsters together and now have to figure out who they are apart. There's also Pixies' Here Comes Your Man, Iron Maiden's The Trooper, and Cowboy Junkie's cover of Sweet Jane. Each song is placed deliberately, matching the mood and energy of its scene. But the real showstopper is David Bowie's Heroes over the closing credits. This is the original Bowie version, not the Peter Gabriel cover that the show used back in Season 1 and Season 3. According to the Duffer brothers, using Bowie's original for the finale was the perfect choice. Heroes is perfect for Stranger Things. The lyrics about being heroes just for one day, about beating them forever and ever. It's an anthem for exactly what these characters have been doing for 5 seasons. They're not professional heroes. They're just kids, and later teenagers, and eventually young adults who kept standing up when it mattered. The song also has this connection to Season 1 that makes it feel like the show coming full circle. In the 3rd episode of the 1st season, the Peter Gabriel version plays when they pull what everyone thinks is Will's body from the water. It was this devastating moment of apparent loss. Using the Bowie original now at the actual end suggests something different. Not loss, but triumph. Will survived. They all survived. They were heroes, even if just for one day. Or in this case, for 9 years. The music in this episode is just chef's kiss, honestly. Every song choice feels intentional and earned. Kyle Dixon and Michael Stein's score is also incredible throughout, building tension and releasing it at exactly the right moments. But it's the licensed tracks that everyone's talking about. Noah Schnapp mentioned in an interview that they were actually playing Heroes on set during those final takes in the basement. Usually, they film in silence and add music in post-production, but for the very last scene, they wanted the actors to hear it, to feel the emotion of it, as they were saying goodbye to these characters. When those credits roll and Bowie's voice comes in, it's the perfect ending. The finale is packed with little details and callbacks that reward people who've been watching since 2016. I love when shows do this, when they trust that the audience has been paying attention and layer in references that deepen the emotional impact without being necessary to understand the plot. Stranger Things has always been good at this, but the finale goes all out. The most obvious one is the D&D framing. The show opens with a D&D game in Mike's basement in Season 1, Episode 1. Will's playing the wise, Mike's the dungeon master, and they're mid-campaign when Will has to bike home and gets taken by the Demogorgon. The finale closes with them in that same basement, same setup, finishing what feels like their final campaign together. It's a perfect circle. Beginning and end mirror each other. What I really appreciate is how the basement hasn't changed. It's the exact same space, same furniture, same posters on the walls, same lighting. The only thing that's changed is the kids themselves. They've grown up, their voices are deeper, they've got facial hair and different haircuts, but the room is frozen in time. It's this physical representation of childhood, of a space you eventually outgrow but never really leave behind. The moment where Holly and her friends sit down to play their own campaign is a direct parallel to Mike and his friends at the beginning. History repeating, the legacy continuing. I only caught this on a second watch, but Holly sitting in the same chair Mike sat in during the pilot. She's even holding the Dungeon Master's Guide the same way. It's subtle, but it's there. Fun fact, the hero's song connection to Season 1 is something a lot of people missed initially. In Episode 3 of the first season, they pull Will's fake body from the quarry, and the Peter Gabriel cover of Heroes plays over that scene. It was this gut-wrenching moment where everyone thought Will was dead. Using the original Bowie version now, when everyone's actually survived, feels like the show correcting that false death. Will's alive, they all made it. The song that played for a fake tragedy now plays for a real triumph. The Montauk reference is brilliant. Like I mentioned earlier, Stranger Things was originally pitched as Montauk, based on conspiracy theories about government experiments in that New York town. The Duffer Brothers changed the setting to Indiana, but Montauk was always lurking in the background. Having Hopper and Joyce move there for a fresh start is this lovely meta-commentary. The story that started as Montauk ends with characters heading to Montauk. They're going back to the source in a way. Enzo's restaurant has been set up since Season 3. Hopper was supposed to take Joyce there for a date, but then he died and spent a year in a Russian prison. Every season since then has had some reference to this date that never happened. Joyce mentions it. Hopper thinks about it. It became this symbol of normal life, of the relationship they couldn't have because they were too busy saving the world. Finally getting to see them actually have that date, 18 months after everything's over, feels earned. The sensory deprivation tank is back, which makes sense. It's been Eleven's primary tool for accessing her powers since Season 1. But there's something poignant about seeing her in it one final time, going into Vecna's mind, using this device that represents so much of her trauma for one last mission. The tank itself looks older, more worn down, which tracks. It's the same one from Hawkins' lab, the same one Brenner used on her as a child. There's a very subtle Eggo waffle reference that I almost missed. In the epilogue, when they're showing different characters going about their lives, there's a brief shot of Hopper and Joyce's kitchen in Montauk. On the counter, barely visible, is a box of Eggo waffles. It's there for maybe 2 seconds, but it's such a perfect little detail. Eleven's not there, but her memory is. The waffles that became her comfort food back in Season 1 are still around. The 3 waterfalls Mike described are from a conversation in Season 4 that's easy to forget. He and Eleven were talking about running away together, finding a place where the government couldn't find them. Mike had read about this remote location with 3 waterfalls where people live off the grid. Eleven smiled and said it sounded peaceful. Seeing her, or Mike's vision of her, actually at that location is this fulfillment of that dream, even if they're not together. The pain tree imagery is apparently inspired by the Mind Flayer design from Season 2. If you look closely, the tree's structure mirrors the way the Mind Flayer's tendrils spread. It's the same organic, spidery aesthetic. The show's always had this consistent visual language for the Upside Down and its creatures, and the finale maintains that, even as it introduces new elements, like the Abyss. Fun fact about the Broadway show reference. When Eleven and Kaylee are in Vecna's memories, and they land in 1959, they walk through scenes from Henry Creel's past. Some of those scenes are directly from Stranger Things, The First Shadow, the official stage production, that's currently on Broadway. The show actually used set designs and blocking from the play, creating this connection between the stage production and the main series. Apparently, the Duffer Brothers worked closely with the play's creators to make sure the continuity lined up. There's probably loads more I've missed, honestly. People are still finding tiny details and posting about them online. That's the beauty of a finale like this. It rewards multiple viewings and close attention. The Stranger Things finale has been, let's say, a bit divisive. Some people absolutely loved it, some people have issues with it, and most people fall somewhere in the middle. Let's talk about both sides. First, the technical stuff. Netflix crashed on release night. Again, this is becoming a pattern with them and major releases. The site went down shortly after 8 p.m. Eastern Time on New Year's Eve, right when the finale dropped. Millions of people trying to stream a 2-hour episode simultaneously just overwhelmed their servers, apparently. The crash lasted roughly a minute and was fixed after a few refreshes. Fun fact, this is the second time Netflix crashed for Stranger Things Season 5. Volume 1 back in November also caused server issues, with the site being down for about 5 minutes. You'd think after nearly a decade of being one of the biggest streaming platforms on the planet, they'd have figured out how to handle high-traffic releases, but apparently not. The social media reaction to the crash was pretty funny, though. People were making jokes about the upside-down breaking Netflix, about Vecna attacking the servers, that sort of thing. Once people could actually watch the episode, the reactions started flooding in, and they were mixed. The ambiguous ending is probably the most controversial element. A lot of people loved it. They appreciated that the show didn't spoon-feed them a definitive answer about Eleven's fate, that it trusted the audience to interpret the evidence and come to their own conclusions. The idea that hope itself is the point, that choosing to believe in a happy ending is valid even without proof, really resonated with some viewers. But an equal number of people were frustrated by it. After investing 9 years in this story, they wanted concrete answers. They wanted to know for certain whether Eleven is alive or dead. Leaving it ambiguous felt to them like the writers couldn't commit to an ending. There's been loads of debate online about whether ambiguity is sophisticated storytelling or just indecisiveness, dressed up as artistic choice. I fall somewhere in the middle, honestly. I understand both perspectives. Part of me loves the ambiguity, the idea that we get to decide what we believe. But another part of me wanted that definitive moment of relief, seeing Eleven actually alive and safe beyond any doubt. Carly's death is another divisive point. Some people felt it was earned, that it gave her character a meaningful arc and a redemptive ending. She'd been pretty antagonistic when we met her in Season 2, trying to convince Eleven to use her powers for revenge. Having her sacrifice herself to save her sister completes that journey from selfish to selfless. Other viewers thought killing Carly was unnecessary. They wanted both sisters to survive, wanted to see them build a relationship in peacetime instead of only connecting through trauma and death. There's an argument that the show kills off too many female characters, and Carly's death fits that pattern. The pacing gets brought up a lot in discussions. The finale is 2 hours and 8 minutes long, which is the second longest episode of the entire series. Some people thought it was perfectly paced, with the first hour being intense action and the second hour being reflective character resolution. Others felt it dragged in the middle, that the epilogue could have been tighter. Personally, I liked the slower second half. After the intensity of the battle, having time to breathe and see where everyone ended up felt necessary. But I can see how people who wanted constant momentum might have found it a bit slow. The character endings are generally well received. Steve's arc is almost universally praised. People love that he stayed in Hawkins, that he's teaching and coaching, that he found purpose outside of romantic relationships. It's a satisfying conclusion to his journey from popular jerk to beloved protector. Will's implied happiness is also celebrated, especially by LGBTQ viewers who saw themselves in his character. The fact that he gets to move somewhere accepting, that the show suggests he'll find love and community, matters to a lot of people. Noah Schnapp's been vocal about how important that representation is, and it seems to have landed well. Nancy and Jonathan's breakup is more controversial. Some people are sad they didn't end up together after everything. Others appreciate the maturity of showing a relationship ending amicably because people grew in different directions. There's no villain in their breakup, no betrayal, just two people who love each other but can't make it work. That's pretty realistic, actually. The one thing almost everyone agrees on is the music. The needle drops in this episode are spectacular. People who otherwise have mixed feelings about the finale will say, but at least the music was incredible. Prince, Bowie, Fleetwood Mac, all used to perfection. That's the one element that seems to have universal praise. The theatrical release was surprisingly successful. Netflix held 3,500 screenings across 620 theatres, with over 500 theatres showing the finale on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Loads of people went to see it on the big screen instead of streaming at home. Apparently, the communal experience of watching the finale with other fans, everyone crying together, made it feel more like an event. Social media was absolutely flooded with reactions. Hashtag Stranger Things was trending globally for days. People posting their theories about 11, sharing their favourite moments, arguing about whether the ending worked. It's been a properly massive cultural moment. Ultimately, I think the finale is going to be one of those things that sits with you. Some people will come around to loving it after letting it marinate. Others will remain disappointed, and that's okay. Not every ending can satisfy everyone, especially for a show this beloved with this many passionate fans. But the conversations it sparked, the debates and theories and emotional reactions, that's part of what makes it special. While the main series is over, the Stranger Things universe isn't quite finished yet. Netflix has already announced an animated series called Stranger Things: Tales from '85 that's set to premiere sometime in 2026. The series features the original characters, voiced by new voice actors, and follows them as they fight new monsters and unravel a paranormal mystery. The Duffer Brothers are producing it, though they're not writing every episode. They've brought in other writers who understand the show's tone and aesthetic. There's also a live-action spin-off in development, though details on that are quite scarce. The Duffer Brothers have confirmed it's happening and that it'll feature new characters in a new location with an entirely different mystery. So not a continuation of the Hawkins story, but something set in the same universe where the Upside Down and psychic children exist. According to interviews, Matt and Ross Duffer are producing the spin-off, but not writing it themselves. They're handing the reins to someone else, which makes sense. They've spent nearly a decade on Stranger Things. They've earned the right to move on to other projects while still maintaining some creative oversight. The Broadway show, Stranger Things: The First Shadow, has been an absolute phenomenon. It opened on the West End in London in 2023 to rave reviews, won a bunch of Olivier Awards, and then transferred to Broadway in April 2025. Since the finale aired, the show's been breaking box office records at the Marquis Theatre. Apparently, people who watched the series finale and saw those scenes from 1959 want to see the full origin story of Henry Creel. Fun fact, the show grossed over $2.5 million in a single week after the finale premiered. That's massive for Broadway. The production explores young Henry Creel's backstory, how he got his powers, his relationship with his family, and the early days of the Hawkins lab experiments. Jamie Campbell Bower, who plays Vecna in the series, has said the stage show really enriched his understanding of the character. Beyond the official expansions, Stranger Things' cultural impact is just undeniable at this point. The show basically revived 80s nostalgia as a mainstream aesthetic. Every streaming service now has at least one show trying to capture that same retro supernatural vibe. Kate Bush's career got a second wind because of Season 4. Metallica's Master of Puppets charted again because of Eddie Munson's scene in the Season 4 finale. The show launched careers too. Millie Bobby Brown went from an unknown kid to one of the most recognised young actors on the planet. She's got the Enola Holmes franchise. She's been in Godzilla films. She's a producer now at 20 years old. Finn Wolfhard's directing movies. Sadie Sink's been nominated for Emmys. Gaten Matarazzo's done Broadway. These kids grew up on camera and parlayed it into legitimate careers. What the finale means for the show's legacy is still being determined, honestly. It's only been out for a day, as of this recording, but initial reactions suggest it'll be remembered as a satisfying, if imperfect, conclusion to one of Netflix's defining series. Not everyone loves it, but most people seem to respect what it tried to do. The main story is done. The gate is closed. The Upside Down is destroyed. But Hawkins and the weird, magical universe the Duffer Brothers created will continue in different forms. Whether that's a good thing, or whether they should just let it end here, well, I guess we'll find out. So that's the Stranger Things finale. After 9 years, 5 seasons, and 42 episodes, that's how the story of Eleven and Hawkins comes to a close. The show accomplished something pretty remarkable when you think about it. It took a premise that could have been a one-season nostalgia trip and turned it into this sprawling, emotionally resonant story about found family and growing up while facing impossible odds. The D&D metaphor that runs through the entire series, the idea that life is this campaign we're all playing together, really lands in the finale. Whether the ending worked for you probably depends on what you wanted from it. If you needed definitive answers and complete closure, you might be disappointed. If you wanted hope and the freedom to imagine your own version of what happened next, you probably loved it. I think it's a good ending, honestly. Not perfect, but good. It gives most characters satisfying conclusions while leaving just enough ambiguity to keep us talking about it. And really, that's what Stranger Things has always done best. It makes us feel things, makes us debate and theorize and care deeply about these characters. And that's where we'll end tonight. Whether Eleven is alive somewhere near those 3 waterfalls, or resting in peace, whether you loved the finale or you're still processing it, I hope this helped make sense of how it all came together. Until next time, stay safe, sweet dreams, and may your own Upside Down stay firmly closed.